Dobrý večer, vítám vás na další debatě inspiračního fóra. Welcome to another evening, which is part of our Inspiration Forum and of the Ji.hlava International Documentary Films Festival. We will spend the next 60 minutes together, and we have a special evening which is devoted to the topic of Czech Vietnamese people, or Vietnamese people living in the Czech Republic, with the title Banana Children. You can watch us via Facebook or via YouTube. And now, let me introduce our guests. We have a gender balance today. First, there is Marta Lopatková from Charles University. Then the Czech Vietnamese director, Cam Van Nguyen, and Ji .hlava, who is a psychiatrist. We have a specialized section at aktualne.cz, which is a Czech news server devoted to the Vietnamese community in the Czech Republic, and we have this title, Banana Children. I don't know if that is too stereotypical, so maybe I would like to ask Diana and Ji, do you feel okay with this label, Banana Children? Well, I don't really use it, but I think it fits. So when I learned that the title of your article would be Banana Children, I was okay with that, but maybe I would prefer the title A Second Generation of the Vietnamese in the Czech Republic. Yes, I agree with Diana. At first glance, I was surprised, but I still understand this metaphor. It is a label because the Vietnamese people don't like being labeled like this, and maybe I would prefer another title. And Marta, what about the academic sphere? What do they think of this label? Well, of course, it is not seen in a very positive way, especially abroad, where people are even more sensitive to such labels. The trouble is that labeling people like this actually strengthens the stereotype, and we try to get rid of stereotypes. If we use such terms, such labels, we repeat the stereotype, although we don't mean it in a negative way. So this is not an ideal term, but I must say that in the Czech Republic the term is quite widely used, and I wouldn't say it has negative connotations. Of course, there are proponents of the term, and there are people who don't like it, and these are both within and outside the Vietnamese community. Okay, now Diana, you were born in 1993 in Cheb. You have Vietnamese parents who met in Nejdek. And I would like to ask you about how you learned Czech in your environment when you were a child. And I know that your parents were really busy at work when you were a child. So did you live with the so-called Czech grandmothers? I don't really remember how I learned Czech, because I spent a lot of time with my family. Maybe I was an exception, because I did have a Czech grandmother, but I didn't really spend the whole day with her. I spent most of the day with my family, and I remember that actually many Vietnamese friends and parents told me that I was really good at Vietnamese, surprisingly good. I learned proper Czech when I went to kindergarten, but I don't really remember. And when I was at a basic school, I already could speak fluently Czech. And Ji, you also lived with Czech grandmothers. Did they enrich you? Yes. I not only learned their language, but I also learned Czech culture. And I had more Czech grandmothers. not because I was misbehaving, but because my parents kept moving a lot. And often I had such a strong relationship to my Czech grannies that my parents didn't like it.
Marto, proč byly tehdy
Marta,
v 90. letech české babičky
in the 90s, the Czech grandmothers were very popular or with the Vietnamese community. Why was that so? Well, it was because of the situation at the time. There were Vietnamese people who arrived in the Czech Republic, and after some time they had children. Some of them brought their children from Vietnam, some of them had children in the Czech Republic, and they needed their children to be able to speak Czech. And they needed to work a lot at the same time, so they needed a nurse, someone who would do the babysitting. Also, there were not big Vietnamese markets like there are today, so it wasn't possible to have someone who would look after the children at the market, for example. And therefore, they always looked for an older woman who took care of the children, who spent a lot of time with the children, and made sure that they learned proper Czech. So actually, this was a win-win situation because the children could learn Czech, and also they were taken care of. Today, the situation is getting different. Because, as Thai said, some of the children had really close relationships towards these grandmothers. And sometimes this meant that they didn't really learn Vietnamese, which didn't make their parents happy. So, within the Vietnamese community, some people feared that their children might lose their Vietnamese origin and stopped understanding their culture, their roots. Therefore, they were looking for Vietnamese nurses, Vietnamese babysitters. But I still think that even today, the Czech grandmothers are used among the Vietnamese, but they are also partly replaced by Vietnamese caregivers. And also the daily routine of the Vietnamese people changes, so they don't spend the whole day working as before. They spend some of the time with their children. They maybe also hire a babysitter, and so on. Diana, you said openly that when you were a child, you felt that you weren't beautiful enough. You wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes. Why did you feel like this? Well, it came only later that I understood that I didn't really have any role models who would be Vietnamese. I only saw blonde, white women in stories. And I only realized that when I was an adult, when I was at college. And I think this had a lot to do with me being sure of myself. I didn't feel good about how I look, and today I think this has changed. I'm now much happier with my origin, with my race. So now it is absolutely all right for me, but of course it would have been much better if I already understood that when I was a child. Okay, and what actually changed? Why did you start seeing your origin as something positive? Well, I think that this is external influence. I felt that boys liked me. So it was really from the outside. It was not inside me. I wasn't just becoming happy with myself, but I needed praise from the outside, from others. So I needed to have it confirmed that I am fine.
Diana, pro vás je jako hodně matoucí, když
Diana,
se neustále potkáváte
is it confusing for you if people ask you whether you are a Czech or a Vietnamese woman?
Já to beru jako
Well,
takovou standardní otázku.
for me, this is a very
sama na
frequent
ní
question,
odpovídám tak, že se
and
asi
I
mentálně cítím
generally
víc jako
say
Češka,
that
ale
I
zároveň
feel
o
more
sobě
like
neřekla,
a
že jsem Češka,
Czech
protože
person,
si uvědomuji
but I
svůj
wouldn't
původ
really
a
say that
kdybych si
I'm
měla,
simply
kdybych měla
Czech.
jako říct, jestli jsem spíš Češka nebo Vietnamka,
And
tak asi
if
musím
I
říct,
were
že
to
jsem
decide, I
jsem
would
Vietnamka.
actually have to say that
Takže
I'm
vlastně
Vietnamese.
sama ještě nedokážu
So
mluvit
I
o sobě
cannot
jako
really
o někom,
say
že
or
že
claim
když
that
jsem
I
se
am
narodila,
Czech,
tak nerada chci
although
říct,
I
že
was
jsem
born in the Czech Republic.
Tady vy jste nám přiznal, že
And
jste dlouho
you,
neměl
Tai,
potřebu řešit, že
you
jste v
said that
uvozovkách jiný.
you, for a long time, didn't really need to think about being different, but then you had a classmate who said that you were a banana, yellow on the outside and white on the inside. What happened? What did you feel then? Well, it was at school. Maybe it was after an English lesson. And for me, this was a very interesting notion. I understood what she meant, but I didn't identify myself with it. I wouldn't really say that I had an identity crisis. I feel like a person who thinks Czech. And if I had to choose, I would say that I am Czech because I couldn't behave in a Vietnamese way anymore. So I identify myself as a cosmopolitan person, as a Vietnamese person with Vietnamese origins, but who thinks and behaves Czech. So I don't need this nationality label anymore. Marta, we have heard two examples of two Vietnamese people in the Czech Republic having multiple identities. Could you describe this development in these people from late childhood to their adulthood? They are raised in Czech environment, but they have Asian origins? Well, I think that the answers we heard were really insightful. It happens often that children of Vietnamese parents go to Czech kindergarten, Czech school. They have Czech friends, and they don't have so many Vietnamese friends anymore. Also, they get Czech names by their teachers. Things tend to change, but when Diana and I were growing up, it was they were, for example, given Czech names by their teachers. So they were given a Czech identity by the Czechs. Then at some point, the Vietnamese people tended to deny their Vietnamese identity. Sometimes they were ashamed of it. They were mocked at. Then they reached high school. Maybe they went to a bigger town. They realized that they were not alone in being Vietnamese. And some of them actually got back to their Vietnamese names, rediscovered their Vietnamese origins, and this often developed to its full potential when they went to universities. They grew up, they got over the stereotypes, they are not alone anymore, and they are among other young Vietnamese people, and many of them get back to their Vietnamese roots. Sometimes they also compare themselves to other Vietnamese people. Some choose a hybrid identity, partly Czech, partly Vietnamese, combine them in one way or another. Of course, this is individual and there are many options.
It is very individual, and we've seen that in our survey about what Czechs like about the Vietnamese, and we'll see it right now. I don't know any Vietnamese in person, but generally I like that they smile all the time. I like their culture, their films that are made in Vietnam. I like their art scene. And I also like their table manners. I like how hardworking they are. Their never-ending smile, and I don't think it's fake or forced. I like that they are really committed to what they do. They do not compare themselves with others, whether they have more or less, so on. I regret not knowing in person any Vietnamese. So really, I don't know if I can judge, if I can say, because generally Vietnamese, what is that? I like their perseverance and how hardworking they are. It's fascinating. Well, it might be a stupid answer, but I like their food. And then just with all other people, if they're good people, everything, and when they're bad, nothing.
Marto, tady jsme slyšeli spoustu věcí,
Marta, so we've heard some stereotypes or first thoughts about the Vietnamese. It might be different in reality. What are the most common stereotypes? Their hardworking spirit, respect towards their parents. What do you think? I think these are the visible things, how hardworking they are. And some people think that the Vietnamese desire to work all the time and study all the time and be the best at school and so on. I've met once a woman in a debate who told me that she had this Vietnamese student who was explicitly and intentionally the best one. These are really stereotypes because they are clever Vietnamese just as they are clever Czechs. There are stupid Vietnamese too. There are hardworking and less hardworking Vietnamese people. We need to look at the motives. The fact that there are grocery shops run by Vietnamese is a matter of necessity. This is the only choice for them to pay their debts, for instance. Plus, the first generation doesn't really master Czech, so this is the only option on the table. I think that really this hard work is the most common stereotype, or their involvement in drug trafficking. Again, it is really stereotypical. Some do, some don't. Maybe our two guests, Diana and Tai, could tell us more because I bet they know more stereotypes themselves. Yes, Diana, tell us, what is your take on stereotypes about Vietnamese? What is the most common cliché? Yes, as we've said, this perseverance, hard-working spirit. At school, this is something quite common, but we need to mention that many Vietnamese children work harder because they are forced by their parents. Other stereotypes include the fact that Vietnamese are very good at maths, or that they can't drink alcohol, they suffer after drinking alcohol. It's not true. I think that people see good students at schools or shopkeepers who are Vietnamese. This is the most visible thing, but again, it's just a stereotype. Tai, would you like to add something? No, I don't think so. I don't know if you can hear me well, but I don't like stereotypes generally.
Pardon, my vás neslyšíme.
Pardon. Tak jenom teď, jestli jsem slyšet,
Okay,
už
you
je to
can
lepší?
hear me now?
Jo,
Is
super.
it better? Fine.
Dneska už
I'll
je relativně
repeat.
běžné setkávat se
It
s
is
Vietnamci i v netradičních
customary today
odvětvích.
to come across Vietnamese people in other fields. We have director Diana here, Thai psychiatrist. We have a YouTuber in the Czech Republic. Every Vietnamese person I interviewed told me that education is very important, have university degree too. Marta, what do you think about this emphasis on education and fields, prestigious fields of studies such as law and medicine, economy? What do you think about this? And is it still valid today for the parents of the Vietnamese kids to want it? I do believe this. Yes, they are very focused on prestigious universities. But the environment they live in changes. Many Vietnamese people are already involved in other professions. So this changes, and the first generation also sees that also in different sectors, cafes or restaurants, their children can be successful. So it changes. But the first way to think is to earn a university degree. But what happens quite often is that then they pursue different careers. I think that they need to see more diversified cases and situations, but it will take some time because prestige in general is an important concept in the Vietnamese culture. How you work as a doctor, you studied to become a psychiatrist. So was it your wish or your parents? I am not a psychiatrist. I specialize just in this field. And yes, my parents wanted me to become a doctor. I was attracted by natural sciences in general. I was attracted also by the profession of a teacher. That was my second choice. But then I made my way to medicine, and my parents are happy now. I think that your job must be difficult, and you come across patients in urgent situations. I can imagine that your appearance may be questioned, and you handle some stereotypes at your workplace. Well, I think that this stereotype was not a question, but primarily I wanted to become a sexologist, and I wanted to choose a field which wouldn't be a surgeon. So the truth is, I do come across some urgent cases, and in which they can have some offensive comments. But in general, patients I work with are positive and polite. Sometimes when I have to face stereotypes, I react with a smile on my face. Could you maybe be more specific? Give us some stories? I have plenty of stories to share. As we've seen, people appreciate our food. So my colleagues wanted me to bring spring or summer rolls to work, or other Vietnamese specialties. Some patients ask me if I don't happen to know a neighbor who works in a grocery shop in their village, and so on. Diana, your parents let you decide about your university. when you told them that you wanted to study an artistic degree, they agreed. Why do you think?
Já jsem měla takovou taktiku postupného přemlouvání, protože já jsem
I worked on it. I studied an 8-year-long grammar school program, but after 4 years I changed and a master in high school in arts, and they let me do so. But I think that since my early childhood I was quite actively involved in music and arts. So then I told them I wanted to pursue a different art high school. I was admitted, and since I was at this high school, continuing my art degree at university was quite a natural way. Obviously, they wished I would become a doctor or a lawyer, but they accepted because I was quite coherent in my prospects. When I finally was accepted at the FAMU, the Film and TV school, the fact that my dad appreciated my school went only quite some time after, when the friends of my father told him that the FAMU is quite actually a prestigious school. You participated, Diana, in some extra art classes, which is not quite common. Marta, what do you think about this, that the Vietnamese parents don't opt for art classes for their children? I think that piano classes can be well accepted by the Vietnamese parents, though it is rare. I've personally not come across many cases of Vietnamese families supporting their children in extracurricular art lessons. If they do support extracurricular activities, those are aimed at strengthening the academic skills of their children in order to prepare them for further studies. We must realize that the Vietnamese children spend a lot of time revising, having extra classes of their subjects at school. So we need to realize that not that the Vietnamese would be miraculously clever. They really, really work hard. So art is really not the major focus. I have another widely discussed topic between children and parents in the Vietnamese community, and that is the choice of partners. Marta, could you tell us more about this complicated subject? Why Vietnamese parents in the Czech Republic don't want their children to get married to a Czech person, and they seem to be much more conservative than in Vietnam.
Well, in some ways, in some aspects, they are more conservative. They came from Vietnam, and they brought their ideas, their concepts from Vietnam, and often they stick to them. So they are conserved in time, but this doesn't apply universally. Of course, there are individual approaches, there are exceptions. But yes, in some ways they are more conservative. When it comes to choosing partners, this is a very complicated thing. Often, the first generation of Vietnamese immigrants cannot speak Czech properly. And they also have stereotypes about Czechs. Often, they feel that if a Vietnamese boy marries a Czech woman, she won't be able to provide for the family, to care for the family. She won't be able to do what a Vietnamese wife could. Also, they are worried about if she will be able to give them a son who would continue the family. and if she will be willing to do as they wish. Also, there is the language barrier, there is the cultural barrier. So this, I think, is the main reason why there are obstacles, why there is this conservatism. Many Vietnamese people cannot speak Czech, and we Czechs cannot speak Vietnamese. Thai, you said that one of the things that you don't agree on with your parents was choosing your partner. What were their expectations? Yes, indeed. I did discuss this with my parents. It took a long time, and I wondered why I couldn't have a Czech or a Slovak partner or wife. And they said, you can love whoever you want, but do marry a Vietnamese girl. At first, they said that they wouldn't understand her. I said, okay, and what if she learns Vietnamese? Well, she won't be able to understand our mentality, our culture. She won't be able to cook Vietnamese, and they were always reluctant. But in the end, you chose a Vietnamese partner. Yes, the destiny decided. So at the moment, I'm in love with a Vietnamese person, and I'm happy. So are your parents, right? Yes. And you, Diana, would you fit in this traditional role of a Vietnamese woman who should be ready to help her husband, be respectful of the opinions of the older people and so on? Well, I say this openly and publicly. This would be a big problem for me. I live in a European country, and I feel like women and men should have equal duties. It shouldn't be divided based on your gender. And I myself go to work, so I think that I don't think that in Vietnam the expectations that are there on women are quite right. This is a problem for me. When I go to Vietnam, to my mom, everyone expects that I help her every day, help her cook, help her do the cleaning, while the men in the family just sit and wait for the women to do everything. There are debates on that, but I simply had to accept this. I have to do that in Vietnam, but I will never do it myself, and I hope I won't be obliged to do it in my proper life. And what about your partner? Do you have the same problem? Is it difficult to have a non-Vietnamese partner? Well, at the moment I'm single, but speaking about my parents, I think they are quite open to a possibility of having a non-Vietnamese partner, but similar to what Tai said, they are also unsure whether they could speak and have a chat with a non-Vietnamese person. But I try to say and convince them that if I love the person, that's what matters the most. But yes, they would be happier if I found a Vietnamese partner. Marta, we have been speaking about Vietnamese women in the Czech Republic, but what is their situation in Vietnam? Could you describe the traditional role of women? Well, today's Vietnam, I think, corresponds to what Diana said. There are so many expectations placed on women. Of course, the situation gradually changes. And the Vietnamese people and the Vietnamese society actually pays respect to women. Women have no fears, they have a lot of power. The strong Vietnamese women have been mentioned throughout the history, but maybe this is also part of the problem, because they are so strong that you can do anything to them. They have to work very hard, they are expected to work hard, they are expected to do the hardest work. For example, they sort waste. They have to care for children, they have to do the housework. And it is not common for the men to cook dinner or to help do the dishes. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but this is completely uncommon. The situation of women is really difficult. It is changing, but this will be a very long-term process. I know women who were able to take part in international conferences, but their husbands didn't let them because who would care for the family? Who would cook? That would be a problem for them, which is completely different back here in the Czech Republic.
Já bych ještě zůstal ve Vietnamu.
Okay, let's remain in Vietnam. There is another problem. When Vietnamese people who are born in the Czech Republic meet their families back in Vietnam, what are their experiences? What were your experiences, Thai and Diana? What is the conflict between these worlds?
Já mám vlastně to štěstí,
Well,
že do Vietnamu jezdím opravdu často.
I go to Vietnam quite often.
Už jsem říkala, mám tam
Every year, basically. My mom and my sister live there.
Ale takže teď vlastně
Before I didn't go there so frequently, but now I really have many chances to meet my family. And I remember when I was in my teens, when I was trying to figure out what my identity was, what my home was, I was really happy that I had such a big family. I felt that I'm not alone. But at the same time, it is curious because the big family still tries to comment on everything, on your life, on what you wear, on what your weight is. They ask you how much you earn. So you see an auntie, which you haven't seen for years, and now she starts commenting on all that. This is really curious, but I still am happy to have a chance to meet them and to be able to go there frequently. And you, Thai? Well, I'm lucky and unlucky at the same time. I have a very diverse family, and we have strong bonds in the family. When my parents went abroad and when they came back with their children after a while, they were received very warmly, and I tried to give my love back to my family. I love my relatives. And I've tried to feel just the same as if they lived with me here in the Czech Republic. Can I just pick up on that? Well, Thai said that we aren't there all the time. We are the children of those who went abroad. I think that is why they try to make their love even more obvious. They try to show it. They try to appreciate me. Maybe I was kind of spoiled by them when I came, because they knew I would only come once a year. Then I was so popular, everyone talked to me, which was really nice, I think. Marto, we heard that young Vietnamese, we heard two examples of what the Vietnamese youngsters feel like when they come back to Vietnam. Is this typical or is it rather an exception? Well, it was two lovely stories. I couldn't express that in percentages, but I think that it is quite often the case that young Czech Vietnamese children or European Vietnamese children, when they come back to their country of origin, often it is quite difficult for them. There is the language barrier, which is often present. For example, Diana said that in Vietnam people are really honest. They start asking you direct questions like, what are you wearing, how much you earn, and so on. Sometimes they praise you, sometimes they complain about your handbag, and so on. And this is unexpected. Also, when these youngsters come back, they are labeled. They are labeled as those who lost their roots, as those who don't know how to behave, how to treat people around them. And this can be frustrating for many people. It is not always positive. It is not always a warm welcome. Diana, you mentioned this critique you heard about you not being married at your age. Also, you are trying to study, pursue doctoral studies. So this can be quite controversial. And when you consider to take these steps in your life, if you have children, what would you try to do? What would you try to encourage in them? Well, I don't think I have thoughts so far. Maybe I would like to preserve part of the Vietnamese tradition in my children. I can speak Vietnamese, but I cannot read or write Vietnamese, which I think is quite common in my generation. So I would try to make sure that my children are able to speak Vietnamese. And I have many friends who were Boy Scouts, so I would maybe also like my children to be Boy Scouts. So these were the two goals I have thought of so far, but I don't really know. I would also like them to be able to do whatever they want. I think that my parents and Vietnamese parents in general always think of us making money. And me, myself, I don't keep thinking of that all the time. I prefer doing what I like. I prefer doing what is fulfilling for me. And in this spirit, I would like to raise my children. Dai, have you thought of that? Well, I am the oldest son in my family. And we have also our sanctuary. I would like to pass on our tradition, our values. And I would like to raise my children in a democratic spirit, in a spirit of freedom, which is kind of suppressed at the moment in Vietnam. But with freedom comes responsibility, which I would also like to teach to my children.
Thank you very much. I've seen there were some questions from the audience, so I'll pick some of them and read them. What are the differences between growing up in a Vietnamese and a Czech family? Can you compare the patterns, the relationships between parents and children? Diana, Marta, anyone, take the floor if you want to answer. So I will differences between bringing up children. What I like in Czech families is the time spent together, because I don't think it is that common in Vietnamese families, at least in the Czech Republic. We can't really enjoy our free time by just going to a cinema together or just spending nice time at the zoo. I like that Czech families pay more attention to this and to time spent all together, everyone in the family together. I also like how Christmas holidays are spent, because everyone is supposed to be together. In Vietnam, when we celebrate the New Year, we also try to reunite, but we don't focus that much on time, quality time spent together. I'm not sure now, maybe. Tai, could you tell us, could you maybe compare the differences, families of your classmates at Czech high school, university? I was jealous of my friends who could spend a night over at their friend's place. And just as Diana said, over the last 10 years, we haven't gone on holiday in family. We do spend time together on Christmas. But then I think that I was under closer scrutiny from my parents than in Czech families. Yes, Marta, is it true that Vietnamese parents are stricter? Maybe it is not that surprising. Is there a change when they reach adulthood, at university? What is your experience? I think that some Vietnamese young people rebel against their parents just as Czech youngsters do. But it is a matter of fact that Vietnamese parents are stricter, children have to come home earlier and so on. I've heard from several people that they lacked physical contact and that they didn't see a lot of hugging or kissing between their parents, between parents and the children, and that it was something they missed because it is a way of expressing a certain proximity between the individual members of the family. And it was then something they saw in other families in the Czech Republic, and they didn't understand it correctly. So it was interesting for me. But I have to say, since I am not from a Vietnamese family, I can't really comment on that. But I think that Diana and Thai were nodding their heads. So maybe there was a lack of physical contact. Absolutely, I agree with Marta. I remember that my parents kissed each other just on very rare occasions. I can't really remember much of it. I, for my part, would disagree because we did express love physically. When I was afraid at night, they came and hugged me. The first thing I do when I come home, I hug my parents. There's one more question by Michal Wolf. What do you think about the political system in Vietnam? You said that you follow news in Vietnam and that you visit regularly Vietnam, so you can compare the reality of life in Vietnam and the Czech Republic. So what is your take on this, Diana? Well, I do follow the news, but since I can't read in Vietnamese, it's difficult. If you go to Vietnam just as a regular tourist, you can't really tell that people there are unsatisfied. You can't even tell there is communism. You have shops, the economy is growing, everything seems to work. It was only when I was older that I started to follow certain activists, American Vietnamese, visiting Vietnam and emphasizing prisoners, the problem of political prisoners and so on. So then I started to participate in discussions, and I noticed that there has been more talk about it in the Czech Republic too. I regret it, but I don't do anything actively against this. Thai, what about you? I try to be apolitical. I have family members who are members of the Communist Party. Some of them are still believers of the regime, but the majority of them not. And the majority of them are afraid. I personally am against communist doctrine. Marta, could you tell us about how it really works in Vietnam? Well, the communist regime is very strict. I think that over the last couple of years, activism started to be severely punished. So if you express yourself against the regime, you criticize, you face a real danger. Many people flee the country for absolutely common things that pose no problem in our countries. I think it is very important to realize that you can't really tell when visiting Vietnam that the regime is very strict. Censorship is omnipresent because people seem to watch YouTube videos in cafes and so on. So it is hard to realize that it indeed is an authoritarian regime suppressing human rights. So it is even more so important to talk about this publicly. Vietnam suffers from corruption, which is really immense. There is practically no rule of law. When you in Vietnam face a problem, there is no way to defend yourself against it. If you have no money to pay the fines imposed on you, you have real problems. The healthcare system is also really problematic. It does exist, but you have to pay for it, so it is really not accessible. The country is really, really complicated. One more question. Do you have Vietnamese friends? If so, are there moments where when you feel that you need to see them because you can communicate well with them? I think that the majority of my friends are Vietnamese. I have just a handful of Czech and Slovak friends that I get on well with. I met them at university and I have good relationships with them.
Já to mám asi přesně naopak.
I think my situation is just the contrary. Most of my friends are Czechs, and I have a few Vietnamese friends coming from the artistic circles, so we share the same interests. But I do have a great friend whom I have known since the elementary school, and she really can understand some things that no one other can, especially when we talk about Vietnamese traditions or issues with our parents. She's the one I can turn to because she will really understand. Thank you. I think this was the last question, so thank you again. Thank you, Ji.hlava, Doctor, Diana, Director, and Marta Lopatková, Researcher. I am Marek Pros, and if you're interested in our thematic category about this topic, you can visit it online or can visit the page. At the same time, see the next debate. Thank you very much and good night.
Děkujeme.
Naschledanou.